Welcome to Pet's Pondering. Today we are again reading out of Chicken Soup from the Soul, Miraculous Messages from Heaven. This one is, Your Mom Told Me to Do This. This is really an interesting story. We are each of us angels with only one wing, and we can only fly by embracing one another. Luciano di Crescendo. I was largely unaffected by the global recession until I lost my job in 2011. That's when I decided to become a freelance writer, inspired by a memorial to an American hero, Sparky, in my hometown of Princes Risborough, England. I started looking into the story. That's how I met Maureen, who in 1991 had campaigned to bring this brave young pilot the recognition that he deserved. I went to meet her, and she sent me away with a huge wad of paperwork and hours of video footage. As I waded through old letters, military magazines, and watched Sparky's memorial service on television, I was welling up inside. Then, when I returned to speak to Maureen about it, she said she'd been guided to honor Sparky's memory by the spirit of his late mother, Miriam. Maureen explained, I was just 11 years old in November of 1943 when the roaring engines of the B-17 bomber passed just inches over the roofs of neighboring houses. Where I lived in Prince Risborough, the experience was deafening and really frightening. My mother yelled hysterically, "They're attacking the train!" My brother was waiting at the railroad station to go to school, and she was afraid he would be hurt in an imminent attack by the Germans. Fortunately, local schoolboys recognized the plane's U.S. markings and shouted, "It's American!" The plane was on fire with flames coming in on the rear. I saw it lurch over the top of a bungalow before crashing into a field where it detonated on impact. It crashed. I found later out that it had 3 tons of explosives on board. The pilot didn't stand a chance. The huge explosion shook the ground and sent shrapnel flying in all directions. I heard of a local farmer had been pinned to his milking shed by a piece of shrapnel that flew in while he was getting ready to milk the cows. I saw the whole incident unfold before my bedroom window, and witnessing it had a huge impact on my life. As I grew up, I started to wonder about the identity of the pilot who had steered his stricken plane away from Prince, and in doing so, saved the town. As I sat with Maureen, she explained that in adulthood, she was told 3 times that a person called Miriam was trying to connect with her from the other side. But she didn't know anyone named Miriam, so she ignored it. 50 years after the crash, she met a gentleman on a flight to the U.S. and asked him to help her find the name of the pilot who died that day. He put a letter into the U.S. military magazine, which led to an uncovering of the pilot's identity. His name was Clyde Cosper, Sparky to his friends. I started to get letters from all over the world, she said, and from people who were interested in the story and from people who knew about the event. It was a strange time as a series of coincidences occurred. I did reread this first. I felt it was my purpose to bring honor to Clyde Sparky Cosper in recognition of his sacrifice. I got in touch with a local newspaper the Bucks Herald in 1991, and they sent a reporter to research the story. They contacted Sparky's relatives in the U.S., and the paper also raised funds to build a memorial to Sparky in the town center. So now I understood how that memorial came to exist. Maureen supplied me with a lot of paperwork that explained the mission of the stricken plane. It was including a letter from one member of the crew, Charles Pondering, describing the whole experience. Their mission in 1943 was to bomb German U-boats in Brenham, but the mission was canceled and they were told to turn back since a very bad storm was brewing. The radio signal came too late. They tried to turn back, but became embroiled in the storm and lost control of the plane. It was being tossed around in a thunderhead like a toy. The crew jumped out, but Sparky stayed at the helm to try and guide the plane to safety. The Buck Herald reporter helped Maureen and tracked down Charles von Rechek, who had bailed out when Sparky told them to evacuate over the intercom. The subsequent unveiling of the pilot's identity captured the imagination of the world's press, and Maureen collected all the newspaper reports surrounding the whirlwind of activity that ensued. It all now seemed to be out of her control and in the hands of fate. Maureen showed me all of the articles that she had collected. One was printed in a U.S. newspaper called the Bonham Favorite, where journalists in America had picked up a story. Crew members, Charles told them, I had no thoughts as I bailed out. Things were happening too fast. I was busy dodging the telephone wires. I'm sure he, Sparky, could have bailed out if he wanted to. I think he was trying to clear the town. He wanted to save those people and park the plane where it wouldn't take anyone's life. He guided it into a field where it blew up with 3 tons of bombs on board. I felt incredibly privileged to be immersed in the whole experience decades later. Maureen explained how meeting the family had been such an eye-opener. I was amazed to hear that Sparky's mother's name was Miriam, and it brought back memories from my past when I was told Miriam is trying to contact you from the other side. Miriam had shot herself, committing suicide in 1954. She was devastated at the death of her son and never recovered. Maureen continued, I felt like I had been led by Miriam to bring recognition to Sparky's actions, and I embraced that role with great enthusiasm. None of Sparky's relatives knew of his heroics. There were so many casualties in the war that the incident had passed with no particular comment. When they heard how Sparky's brave actions had saved their town, they were very grateful to Maureen for bringing him the recognition that he deserved. She learned more about Sparky through hearing the family stories about him. He was just 21 years old and a jovial character whose ambition growing up was to be a fighter pilot. He trained at the Bradley Aviation School, now the Bradley Airport, Texas, and was concerned about the math. But he need not have to worry. He proved to be a highly skilled and was in the top 10% of bomber fighters. This meant he was eligible to attend bomber flight school, where he completed his training and was awarded his wings in February of 1943. He named his plane Miriam after his mother. He gave his mother a Royal Flypaster house in his B-17 bomber during the summer of 1943, just months before he died. Maureen and I have been both in correspondence with Sparky's relatives in recent years to bring honor to his name and ensure that what he did for our town is never forgotten. Maureen's early communications resulted in a memorial service being held in his hometown of Douglas City, Texas, where a veteran's home was named after his name. Was opened in his name, the Clyde W. Cosper, Texas State Veterans Home. Maureen had been invited to attend the memorial service, which was an incredibly moving experience. I watched it on video 10 years later, and it had me in tears too. Charles was also there, and those in attendance heard speeches from Sparky's relatives, from Charles, and from the Texas Land Commission at the time. Maureen also said a small piece and was asked to go on television. All this time, Maureen felt that Miriam was leading her, influencing events, and making sure that she met people who could help. She said, "The whole experience seemed to carry me away on a wave of activity and strange condolences. Curiously and unexpectedly, I was meeting people who helped bring recognition to Sparky's sacrifice. And I felt that someone was using me as an earthly guide to make things happen." Maureen is now in her 70s, and I'm starting to wonder if it's my fate to continue telling this story so that Sparky's ultimate sacrifice is never forgotten. And this was written by Susie Curley. Can you imagine? There's got to be a lot of stories like that of people during the war, things that they did, how they helped, their sacrifices they made, and the sacrifices of the families. You know, I am so honored to be from a military family. My grandfather, my father, both my brothers, my niece, my nephew. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm so proud of them for standing up for our country and being willing to go to fight. I lost a great uncle in Korea. And I'm sure anyone that's had any connection with the military, the wives, the children of those men. You know, I remember my brother was gone for 6 months at a time. During the war, I'm sure there was some that were gone more than, a year or two. But they were proud to serve. My dad was so proud of his Navy years. So, be proud, salute that flag, and be glad that you're born in America. Bye for now.